Hey guys, Jordan here. In this video we're going to be doing a comparison of the iPhone 14 Pro with the iPhone 13 Pro at this real estate photography shoot. We're going to be shooting 5 or 6 pictures with each camera and doing a side-by-side comparison to see if the 14 Pro is a valuable upgrade over the iPhone 13 Pro. So let's get started. Alright, so both cameras are set up the same. We're going to be shooting raw images, so we're going to start here and we're going to be using primarily the ultra wide. Make sure that raw is selected. And now I'm going to grab the other one. So we're going to be shooting them pretty much at the same time so I can get similar compositions for comparison. All right. And the 14 Pro, the main camera, has a 48 megapixel sensor on it. So I'm going to get a couple shots of the 48 using that lens as well outside of the ultra wide, just so we can get a good idea of what quality you can get out of that sensor, because that might be a feature that trickles down to the other lenses as well. All right, this is a good shot that'll show how much information is in that blown out sky in each camera. All right. So that's a good example. So we want, something that's very important with real estate photography is just to test the dynamic range. So that's why I'm looking for a good 5 or 6 photos to get a good idea or show you guys, how these cameras actually perform. All right, so we'll get a nice wide shot here of this room. In this one, I'm gonna do a 1x, and I have the raw setting set to 48 megapixels. So that'll be a good one to see if there's a lot of noise in the shadows and see what we can get. And I'll also get a 1x photo with the 13 Pro just to compare the 48 megapixels versus the 12 of this one. All right, so this kitchen is a good one as well for an example because there's a window. There's also dark cabinets, which sometimes can be a challenge. All right, so a picture here in the kitchen. I'm also going to do a 1x lens in here. All right, now we'll get a picture for low light. So for that, we're going to go into the garage. We'll just take a picture from this corner with each ultra wide. All right, now we'll take this picture as well because it's kind of dark in here, but we have the window so we can kind of test the dynamic range of a single image, which is typically what you're going to be shooting on an iPhone or hand holding. You're usually not shooting bracketed photos. I'm also going to get a shot of the stairs as well because we can see detail as well. This, and we'll go upstairs and do one more picture. All right, now interiors that are kind of dark, let me make sure both lenses are very clean. Now we'll be able to test with that picture how much we can boost the shadows on the interior as well as bring down the highlights from outside. Now there's not too much to test over here, but I think that's probably good enough for this comparison. So now we're gonna jump over to the computer to take a look at a side-by-side comparison of the pictures to see if you can tell a difference. And as well as I'll give you my thoughts of if I feel like the 14 Pro is a valuable upgrade over the 13 Pro. All right guys, so I'm back at my office and I have the 13 and 14 Pro images imported here on my Lightroom. So let's jump over to the computer just so that we can take a look at the differences. One thing that if I'm looking at these raw images, you can see the settings. You can see that the sensor or the lens is slightly bigger on the 14 Pro for the ultra wide, but the aperture is smaller, not as wide. We got a 2.2 versus, actually I think this is the ultra wide. 1.8 is what, but it's smaller, so it's 1.57. So anyways, just something to notate, I suppose. But if I'm just looking at these, these are all unedited images, right? So these first 10 are the 13 Pro, and the second 10 are the 14 Pro, right? So we have these all the way up to, actually these two rows right here. These two are the 13, and right out of camera, if I had to pick one, I would choose the 13 Pro. It looks like the light metering, you know, you can see the light metering. I don't know if that may have been an issue on the 14 Pro, or maybe the settings were a little bit off. Yeah, I don't know. It seems like the 48 megapixel is what it is. Because if I'm looking at this, you can see the dimensions is 8,064 by 6048 pixels. So that's a ton of pixels. On all three of these really dark, actually this one's not. This one's only 12 megapixels, and then this one is also 48. Yeah, so all day long I would pick like something easier to work with. In my opinion, 12 megapixels is sufficient for real estate photography. A lot of times we're sending over 3 or 4 megapixel images for our customers to use on the MLS. Color wise, actually, if you look at this picture versus this one right here, let me see if I can do a side-by-side here. If this thing works. All right, here's a side-by-side. The one with the bluer sky is the 13 Pro. That's one thing that I noticed. And I was taking these back to back, right? You know, trying to get similar compositions. And also it looks like there's more detail here on the 13 Pro, just right out of camera. It looks like I'm getting a better result. So let's switch back to this mode. And now what I'm gonna do is take a look at the shadows and the highlights of each. So what happens when we drop down shadows, or drop down highlights and boost shadows, which is something that you do often for real estate photography. And it looks like, you know, this one, it looks kind of green, so you'd probably want to boost magentas a little bit, and maybe the color temp. All right, let me copy these settings straight over to the 14 Pro. See if it's a similar result. Let me go back and forth. Yes. So maybe it's just, yeah, these are almost identical. If I'm looking at these, I can't really tell the difference. Obviously there's a slight shift in composition, but from a quality perspective, it's really hard to tell a difference. Yeah, I'm looking at, you know, the areas that might be problematic. All right, let's move on to this other shot. Let me just paste those same settings. Actually, no, let's not. This one is a little bit different. I wanted to test how much detail you got in the sky here. So let me go ahead and hit reset. So for that, we're gonna reduce shadows, and we're gonna bring down exposure. So there's really not, there's not a ton of detail in there. Let me copy this and paste it over here just to see if it's any different. So same settings, very similar result. Just looking at what it is. Now it's definitely usable. I like this picture. This would be a candidate for potential, you know, open in Photoshop and do a sky replacement. But overall, I think the image quality looks pretty good. And I think, like, there's no distortion on these. The lines are straight, and I don't even have the profile correction selected. I wonder if it changes anything, or they probably don't even have the newest phones here. Yeah, they don't have the 14, they have the 13 Pro. Anyways, but it looked like in camera, without this selected, it looked, these lines are looking straight. So no need to adjust it now. Obviously this is pointing down, so we can hit auto. It'll correct you know, the camera that was pointing down. And let's take a look here. Highlight, shadows. boost shadows. Let me turn up the temp, or you can set temp with the picker. Just trying to get a sense. You know, there's a lot of like greenish hues on the walls, so the color at whatever, it's got to be at the ISO 160 on the inside, at least on the iPhone. It's definitely pretty noisy. Now let me transition to the other 14 Pro, see if we're getting a different result. Does it look any less noisy? Let's take a look. Command, and we'll do a side by side. All right, so I have both images selected right here. Let me go back to library to look at them side by side. Which is which? I would say obviously this one looks a little more green. This one's a little bit more magenta, but similar result. I'm not seeing any drastic differences. Let me know in the comments below if you're seeing something that I'm not. All right, let's move on to this one. Man, some of these just bother me that it's hard to get composition correct just hand holding a phone, but if you hit auto here, no, that's not even, that didn't do what I wanted to do. So I wanted it to rotate, sorry. The horizontal. You see that? Just straighten it out. All right, now we're looking a little better. But as is, this looks great. We're getting a lot of detail out of the windows. The dark cabinets look good. I wouldn't boost shadows too much. If you start to boost shadows, it starts to get a little bit noisy. But I think this is a perfectly appropriate picture. Let me see if I can copy this and paste it on this one, which has the same problems. This one, I think this is the 48 mega. Yes, this is the 48 megapixel. If I'm just looking at the detail. The detail looks bad, honestly. It's hard to tell. And this is where you can see that megapixel doesn't really matter too much. This one has got to be 48 megapixels. You see how crisp this looks when I'm zoomed in? I might have them backwards. I don't think I do though. I know I imported first the iPhone 13 images, and then I imported the 13. So let me take a look. Which one? It was this one. This is the one that we were just on. Look at the dimensions. 40, 32, that's 12 megapixels. Look at the Frigidaire gallery. This looks much better than the 14 Pro 48 megapixel. Here we go. Is this it? No. This is it. Yeah, you see this is 48 megapixels. All right, let me paste on this one. Oh, okay, this is 12 to 12. But let's take a look at the 12 because we shot this with the ultra wide, or sorry, the 14 Pro. Getting it all mixed up. Too many lenses on these cameras and too many phones. But you can see the 13 Pro was much more crisp. Maybe the focus wasn't quite right. It looks like it's in good focus. Just the quality, look. Very, very different result than the 13 Pro. Yeah, this is the 1X camera, 13. Okay, let's copy this one. And then we'll paste it on this one. This is the 48 megapixel. All right. Now I got it. Yes, 48 megapixel. Definitely more detail. You can see how it zooms in a lot more. But honestly, you're getting some good detail here even out of the 12 megapixel. So you can see you are getting more from the 48. Wow, that's pretty good. If you really were a pixel peeper, you can see on the edges of the lens, not quite as good. But in the center, and even looking at this, pretty dang good. All right, so on the main camera, the difference between the 48 megapixel and the 12 megapixel is quite, you know, you're getting quite a bit more detail. That being said, in the grand scheme of things, I think the 12 megapixel is perfectly fine, but when you zoom into the 48 megapixel, you're getting quite a bit more detail. Like in this case, just on this dishwasher, right? So over here, if I zoom in, I mean, this is as far as it zooms in because it's less. You can still read it. Can't really read gallery very well, but I think they both produce a great result. But if you do need that extra bit of detail, the 14 Pro is quite nice. All right, let's take a look at low light. Yeah, let's go ahead and see what it looks like here in the garage. Just made minor adjustments. Let's paste these settings onto the other. All right, so that's the 14 Pro. This one's the 13. Really not much of a difference in that picture. Let's take a look here. Let's bring highlights down and shadows up. Bring exposure. Let's try to set white balance. Yeah, that looks a little bit too green. Honestly here, the blues are a little bit too much. Let me reduce the blues. Oh, I'm on luminance. Let's go saturation. All right, that might be a little more appropriate. Let's copy that and paste it on the 14 Pro image. But actually, just right off the bat, this one, let me reset and reset the 13. So this one came out a little bit dark, but we weren't getting as much blue hue. This one, let me just reset. Oh, sorry, I hit paste. Reset. It seemed like, yeah, if you look at right here, this is both reset. It looks like I increased the exposure on the other one, but we're getting a little bit more of a blue color around the window. All right, and for the last ones, I'm just gonna take a look at them. I don't wanna make this video too long, but the light metering is clearly a big difference between the two cameras. Let me just hit auto. This one is problematic right here. You see all the colors. The 13 Pro, this is kind of a low light pushing. No, the ISO is not even that high, 40. Let's copy here. So this would be a good example if there was improvement. You can see all the color banding as well in this one, but I don't think it's as bad on the 14 Pro. If you look at the 13 Pro, you can see a little bit more. It does look a little bit more color banding. I would say slightly more on the 13 Pro, but they both have issues, at least with this shot, of color banding. So anyways, that's a quick comparison of the iPhone, maybe not so quick, but a comparison of the iPhone 13 Pro to the 14 Pro images. In my opinion, for most people, there's not much of a difference. So if you have the iPhone 13 Pro, upgrading to the 14 Pro is not gonna dramatically increase your image quality. And you know, the iPhone, obviously it's not an ideal camera for real estate photography, but it can be a great backup if in the event that you have issues with your main camera or something like that. And but yeah, definitely usable results out of both cameras. There are some slight differences in some of the shots, but other shots not very much different. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video of a comparison between the photos taken from an iPhone 13 Pro and 14 Pro for a real estate shoot. If you have any questions or comments, leave them below. If you got value, hit the like button. We'll see you guys on the next one.